All right, so I was just looking at the Military Orders 100 for the Libra Code, and there's an awesome comment in the comment section. And this Moore said that we should be reading about the Act of 1863. I'm trying to find it right here. But anyways, I'm going to look it up. We're going to read it for the first time. At least I'm going to read it for the first time. And let me share my screen. Maybe some of you, isn't that funny? I am a Moore as well because of the fact that I live in Moore Park. I'm a Moore Parkian. Not funny? Moore. So I guess I'm a Moore. I claim it. So, okay, this is the Confiscation Acts. Oh, United States history, 1861 to 1864. Okay. Remember, have you heard that saying that says that if we forget the past, that we are bound to repeat it? And we need to know what happened in the past. And unfortunately, sometimes we actually get, sorry about that. Sometimes we actually get wrong information because whoever wins the war or whatever, they can rewrite history, kind of like how Constantine, the Roman emperor, totally demolished all the Hebrew stuff, got rid of all the unleavened breads, the Sabbath, all the feasts of Yahuwah, our creator. And then they rewrote history and pretended as if during the Battle of the Milvian Bridge that the Christ came before me and he told me if I put a red cross on everybody's armor on their shields that we would win the battle. Oh, that was ridiculous. I don't think that they had any red paint. Or were they going to use blood? What's the deal? Maybe. But that didn't happen. Get real. That's ridiculous. So anyways, if you look at the, what is it called? I actually did a presentation on Constantine and that Arch de la Triomphe, you know, the triumphal arch. This one man, I think he was a Jewish guy. He was. I can't remember what his name is, Abramovich or something like that. I can't remember what his name is, but he got really close. He got what do they call those things that they could climb on? The builders can put a thing to climb up on, and got his camera, you know, film camera, really close to look at all of the reliefs, the carved out symbols on that Arch de la Triomphe and or something like that. I think it was in Constantinople, maybe, you know. Anyways, he's trying to see if Constantine really was a believer or became a Christian, like he said. And he's looking in the relief, and there's all these river gods and goddesses. He's giving homage, or he's giving like honor to pagan gods and goddesses. There's nothing about Christ in there. There's nothing with any red crosses on the shields. They all had the Phrygian caps that are really popular again, like over in Washington, you know, or the guys that put on that little slouchy cap with all of their dreadlocks in it. They had these Phrygian caps, that's what they call them. And those were a sign of slavery, which I think is interesting. Interesting. Anyways. Because I kind of like, I wanted to get one of those caps, but now that I think about it, you know, a hat shows who your boss is or who has authority over you. Those top hats and the crowns and all those things Hats apparently are signs, they're costumes. You know, I mean, like it says in the Bible about women, how the long hair is their covering, you know, and it's to, I don't know, tell the angels something. I don't know. I think they say that if you're going to say a prayer to cover, you know, the women should cover their head. But I don't know why those Jewish guys wear the little kippah thing. And the Pope wears one too. So I'm just saying, they're not supposed to be wearing that because it's supposedly covering up God. And that would be idolatry because, hello, when you're putting on a costume and covering up something, you know, like, I guess if, here's an example, because I'm in the image business, you know, people wear makeup and they do their hair, but way back before when those angels fell from heaven to earth, they showed the women how to paint their eyes and to do all that stuff. Now you see men wearing makeup and, you know, dressing like women and stuff. But anyways, I'm just saying, those are costumes. Those are things that are not natural, but apparently they draw people to look at me, you know, and that's part of the allure of color. You know, we wear color, like who are those people? The Amish, they wear black and white because maybe they don't want to necessarily draw attention to themselves, although they do wear hats. And I think they're square. Maybe they're not square. I don't know. But I digress. So I wanted to go over this confiscation acts that if you look at that one video that I have, I can't even pronounce his name. Let me see. I want to give him some like shout out here because he's awesome. I'm assuming it's a man. Because there's L at the back. I don't know if there's a difference between L or Bay. I don't know. Okay, where is it? I'm trying to find out his name. But if you look at the video that I have on the Military 100, you'll see his comment and it's really good. And he says that we should go over this, the Confiscation Acts, 1861-64. So let's look at it. In US history, series of laws. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Am I able to make it bigger? I don't know. Guess not. I need to learn how to do this better. Okay, wait. More. No. I need to learn how to use my own computer. I did get a new computer and I'm still not, you know, getting jiggy with it. So anyways, okay, let's just keep going. Sorry. 1861-64, in US history, series of laws passed by the federal government during the American Civil War. This is with Lincoln, that were designed to liberate slaves in the seceded states. The seceded states, they wanted to get out of the whole group, apparently. They wanted to get away from the United States. So the first Confiscation Act, passed on August 6, 1861, authorized Union seizure of rebel property. And it stated that all slaves who fought with or worked for the Confederate military services were freed of further obligations to their masters. President, this is the U.S. CEO of U.S. Corporation, President Abraham Lincoln, who was a lawyer, by the way, objected to the act on the basis that it might push border states, especially Kentucky and Missouri, into secession in order to protect slavery within their boundaries. He later convinced Congress to pass a resolution providing compensation to states that initiated a system of gradual emancipation. Like, apparently, some of the states, they wanted slavery, and some of the others didn't. Well, I don't know if this is just a guise, that he picked up with, because I had heard, and I'm sorry about saying I have heard, and I know it's hearsay, but this is a theory apparently, that Lincoln was he had an emolument. He was a lawyer. And when you're a lawyer, you have esquire. That's almost kind of like a duke, duchess, king. You're not supposed to have an emolument. There's that emolument clause that Kirk, from Kirk's Law Corner, and Chris Hallett, who's passed on, he started his business called E-Clause, but he has unfortunately been killed. Anyways, so this E-Clause is talking about an emolument clause. You cannot have an emolument if you're going to be doing public service. So when Abraham Lincoln had tried 7 times or 9 times to be president, or whatever it was, the story, and failed and failed and failed, and then he succeeded. Well, that's why those other states wanted to secede, get away, because they're like, that is against the Constitution that we swore our oath to, or the Bill of Rights, or whatever it was, that you can't have an emolument and be serving the public. Just saying. I know some other CEOs of the US Incorporated, their wives were lawyers. But anyways, what I'm saying, sometimes I can go off on little tangents here, is that some people were saying that the reason why all these states want to succeed was because they knew that this guy was a corporate CEO. And they're like, get away. We're not like the United States of America. We're like the US Inc. So we don't want to have anything to do with you. And the guise, or the mask, or the scam, if you will, was kind of about him taking on later on about slavery and setting slaves free. But he kind of was, I had heard, he was okay with slavery, having slaves. But he kind of took it on as, no, this is going to be my platform now. We're going to do that. And then you know how the banks and the wars and the both sides, and you know about that kind of stuff, right? Anyways, so right here, he was saying something about how he convinced Congress to have a gradual emancipation. Let's emancipate. Let's free the slaves gradually. So this way we don't lose all the United States of America people, because we want to be one. Where we go one, we go all. That's a way old saying from when those demons, 1/3 of the angels, they decided they were going to come down to earth and get those women. They said, where we go one, we go all. We're binding ourselves together. And that they ended up coming down here. I don't know if it was Mount Hermon. That's another story. But anyways, right here it says that he later convinced Congress to pass a resolution providing compensation to states that initiated, and think about this when I'm talking about this, because right now the things that are happening that they are initiating, when they have the CEO of each state, the governor of each state is initiating systems of gradual what? this gradual slavery. Let's gradually put slaves. Let's gradually put more slaves. Let's mark our beasts. Let's stamp our beasts. So think about this right here, because this is the past. And if we don't remember the past, then we can repeat it. So this is what that CEO of the United States Inc. said, is that he later convinced Congress to pass a resolution providing compensation. Oh, money. Oh, is there some funds that's available for this particular pandemic? Yeah, to states, only the ones that initiated a system of gradual, in this case right here was emancipation, but now look, gradual slavery. When you're being covered up with your mouth and you're being branded like cattle, it's a gradual, the opposite of this. It's not emancipation, it's gradual getting slaves, capturing. So don't you know that there's a lot of programs out there right now that they're providing compensation to the states that start initiating these passports and stuff? Yeah, so this is bad, you guys. This is the total opposite happening right now. So look, it says, but the border states, oh, are we having issues with our borders? Yeah, the border states failed to support this plan. So think about right now and what's happening with the different borders, Canada, Mexico. Think about all the border. Why are they having such problems with the border states or the borders? They want more. Some people want, we want more slaves. Bring them on in, bring them on in. And the other people are like, no, they're going to take our benefits. Put them back, put them back. We don't know those people. Those sheeple, they just don't get it. But the whole idea that they want, let those cows come and graze on our field. We're going to stamp them. We'll give them some money. We'll give you states some money if you let them come in. Just saying. So here, and Lincoln repudiated the position of generals, John C. Fremont and David Hunter, who proclaimed that the first Confiscation Act was tantamount to a decree of emancipation. So, you know, decree, who makes decrees? Kings, CEOs. They knew, Lincoln knew he was the CEO of a corporation. The second Confiscation Act, confiscation, that means you're taking something from somebody. Hey, are they taking stuff from us? Like, you know, right to travel, or you buy or sell. The Confiscation Act, they're taking stuff away. You have to have this branding and this ID, or you can't get any food, or you can't go to concerts, or you can't go places like that. So I want you to think about that when we're looking at this. I'm just reading this for the first time, so I'm just saying it's all kind of flowing. All right, so the second took another time. The second Confiscation Act passed July 17, 1862, was virtually an emancipation proclamation. So they're proclaiming now, saying with their mouth about freedom back then, so-called freedom. It said that slaves of civilian and military, what are you doing? Oh, you're getting into your toy box? Poor baby. It said that slaves of civilian and military, of civilian and military Confederate officials. So they're only saying a certain ones. Haven't you heard that recently? Haven't you heard them say in this administration, we're gonna say that only the people that work for the federal government or the schools have to have this or that. But the other ones, you're gonna just volunteer for like 100-day challenge, like ice bucket challenge. So, so what are we saying here? Where are we? Okay, so it said that slaves of, here's the group, civilian and military Confederate officials. That's only them. It said that slaves of civilian and military Confederate officials shall be forever free. But it was enforceable only in the areas of the South occupied by the Union Army. So they had the Union, right? And then they said only these ones, civilian and military Confederate officials, slaves, shall be forever free. But they could only enforce it only in the areas of the South that was occupied by the Union Army. So Lincoln was again concerned about the effect of an anti-slavery measure on the border states. And again, urge these nations. I'm going to urge you with urgency and say urging so that you can be mandated and urgent, like emergency urgent, these states to begin gradual compensation emancipation. Do you guys see how this old history right here is being the total opposite, but like this? This is amazing. I'm just seeing this right now. This is weird, man. Do you see this? It's like history is repeating itself, but it's flipped like mirror image, kind of like the Matrix, you know? Because they're saying, here we are as a union, and these ones are in the South, and these ones, we only have certain amount of people over here that they can forever free. But then there's other ones outside the union. So then he's saying to the ones outside, look, you guys have to start doing a gradual thing so that we can all come together. And they're doing that with the vaccine passports and this thing and this too. And everybody who's wearing this is obeying. They're kind of like the slaves, you know. And they're saying that all of the executive orders go out to all of the executives of corporations, which shows it's a corporatocracy. It shows that those ones who own the corporations that are incorporated in the United States are all one. Where we go, when we go all. So they're making these corporate leaders the people, and then they're making the ones who aren't slaves. That's what they're doing, because they're covering up all of your mouths, making you get branded and hurting you over here and hurting you over there. And you can't go over there. You can't cross this. Shh. It's going to be terrible, man, if we don't do something about this, because look, they do it little by little by little. That's how they occupy. Lincoln was again concerned about the effect of an anti-slavery measure on the border states, and again urged these states to begin gradual compensated emancipation. So you're going to get rewarded here. If you guys follow through with your plans, we will compensate you for the gradual, let's, instead of it being emancipation, let's put the opposite, slavery. We're going to gradually compensate you for some slavery. That's what they're doing. That's weird. Hang on a second. You know, I want to pause this. I just don't, I guess, hang on. I don't know. I got to let my dog out, but then, oh, I'm going to keep reading. I'm just going to have to let her bark. Karma, I'm trying to read something. It's going to be short. I promise. I'm finishing. On March 12th, 1863, in July, look at how far. This is a year apart. You know how this thing has been going on every year? Look at this, on March 12th, 1863, and then July 2nd, 1864. Do you know how with this scamdemic that they've been doing? It's been going on for a couple years now, and they keep doing little things here and there and passing this and passing that, gradually taking over stuff. The federal government, that's the federal government, the territorial federal government, passed additional measures, captured and abandoned property acts that defined property subject to seizure as that owned by absent individuals who supported the South. The Confederate Congress also passed property confiscation acts to apply to Union adherents. But the amount of land actually confiscated during or after the war by either side was not great. Cotton constituted nearly all the Southern non-slave property confiscated. You know, cotton is the crops that make the clothes. And the cotton fields, they had a lot of slaves picking the cotton. And in California, we grow a lot of vegetables and our fruit and all that. And there's a lot of people that are below, I don't know how much money they make, but below the standard living that are out there. And usually they are people from, you know, other nations, states, or countries, yeah, that maybe don't have US citizenship. So they take those jobs and they pick the fruits. I see them every day when I go by. So cotton back then constituted nearly all the Southern non-slave property confiscated. What does this say? Cotton constituted nearly all the Southern non-slave property confiscated. You know, I'm just thinking about where I'm looking right now in the fields where there's agriculture. Those people are non-slaves because they're not US citizens. They're outside of the United States slavery. So they're non-slaves. And I'm wondering if maybe all of that is going to be confiscated eventually. I don't know. God forbid. Or Yahuwah, help us so that we can see these things. With the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 and passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, however, Southern slaveholders lost an estimated, what is that, 2 million or 2 billion worth of human property. Well, you know, that's kind of good in a way. I think that's sad that, you know, people would be considered property. And that's kind of what we got going on here. We're property if we're going to be, you know, slaves. So let me just see what else here. Well, you know, you got a number. You get that social security number attached to that all capitalized name that's on the birth certificate. That's not really you, but it's owned by somebody. That's like free range slaves. Apparently we're free range slaves. So let me just see what this says. American Civil War, also called War Between the States. Yeah, it is Civil War. It is between the different states because they all wanted something different. Some wanted slavery, some didn't. Or that other theory, they just didn't want, they found out about that corporation head and they're like, dude, you are a lawyer, you have an emolument and you should not even be in charge here because you guys are so tricky wicky with your, you know, wordsmith stuff. And this is what they're doing. They're wordsmithing. They're switching the language, twisting it around. And that's how they're able to steal from us. You know, like in the olden days, the word wicked is bad. But maybe before then, before it was bad, it might have been good because maybe it had to do with the wicks when they were twisting up the garments, like the priests' white robes. They would do the sacrifices, and then after they'd shred it all up, after they did the sacrifices, and then they would use that for the wicks and they'd twist it up, wicked. And then nowadays, people are saying it's good too. They're like, wicked, that's cool, that's good. So you can see how the language gets twisted over and over and over. This is why we also want to know what's the truth too. Hey, April 12th, that's my birthday. April 12th, 1861. Oh, that's a really good thing to remember. What happened then? American Civil War? Is that what happened? April 12th to April 26, 1865. This is very interesting. I was born in 1965. So I should be remembering these dates here. Interesting. So that's the American Civil War. Wow. 1861. How weird that my birthday, April 12th, that's weird, man. This is so interesting. Between the United States and 11 southern states that seceded from the Union with the people in order to form a more perfect union. That was when they had the 13, right? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But then the other ones were seceding and getting out like, we want to get out, and formed a confederate. So the 11 southern states that seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. Interesting. So here was the United States, the Union, they decided to get out. And then these ones all were the Confederate States of America. And you know who? It was the general of the Confederate Army. It was Albert Pike. He's the one that wrote that book, Morals and Dogma. And he is a Freemason. So they're kind of going by that playbook and how they're saying, oh, we're going to have 3 world wars, and the third one's going to be against Israel and Palestine or something like that. It's going to be a religious war. So they're following it like it's a playbook. Prelude to the war, the secession of the southern states in chronological order: South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina in 1860 through 61, and the ensuing outbreak of armed hostilities were the culmination, all coming together, of decades, 10 years of growing, 10, tens and tens of years of growing sectional friction over slavery. Between 1815 and 1861, the economy of the northern states was rapidly modernizing and diversifying. Although agriculture, mostly smaller farms that relied on free labor, remained the dominant sector in the north, industrialization had taken root in the north. Moreover, Northerners had invested heavily in an expansive and varied transportation system that included canals, roads, steamboats, and railroads. In financial industries such as banking and insurance, and in large communication networks that featured inexpensive, widely available newspapers, magazines, and books, along with the telegraph. And now we have internet, telephones, cell phones, 5G coming around the corner. Yikes. By contrast, the Southern economy was based principally on large farms, plantations. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. You remember that, Scarlett? That produced commercial crops such as cotton that relied on slaves as the main labor force, rather than invest in factories or railroads as the Northerners had done. Southerners invested their money in slaves, even more than land. Wow. By 1860, 84% of the capital invested in manufacturing was invested in the free, non-slave holding states. Yet to Southerners, as late as 1860, this appeared to be a sound business decision. The price of cotton, The South's defining crop had skyrocketed in the 1850s, and the value of slaves, who were, after all, property, rose commensurately. By 1860, the per capita wealth of Southern whites was twice than that of Northerners. And 3/5 of the wealthiest individuals in the country were Southerners. So this is interesting that they were in the South investing more money in the slaves. And probably when they would auction them off, it would be more, kind of like how, you know, the things nowadays, we use gas and cars as our workhorses, you know. And so now gasoline is really expensive, and cars are really expensive. It's kind of the same right there, at least. I mean, it's kind of, it's different. It's not people. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to say that people are things, but back then in the South, they were using people as if they were things. They were objectifying them, making them an object, making them property, something to be owned. Kind of like nowadays, we own our car, we own our dog, our cat, our cow, you know, our livestock, our homes, whatever. Well, okay, we don't really own the house, but I'm just saying. So the extension of slavery into new territories and states had been an issue as far back as the Northwest Ordinance. So the extension of slavery into new territories and states had been an issue as far back as the Northwest Ordinance of 1784, when the slave territory of Missouri sought statehood in 1818. Congress debated for 2 years before arriving upon the Missouri Compromise of 1820. This was the first of a series of political deals that resulted from arguments between, should we have slaves or not? Pro-slavery, anti-slavery forces over the expansion of the peculiar institution as it was known into the West. The end of the Mexican-American War in 1848 and the roughly 500,000 square miles, 1.3 million square kilometers of new territory that the United States gained as a result of it, because they're expanding the territory, added a new sense of urgency to the dispute. More and more Northerners, driven by a sense of morality or an interest in protecting free labor, came to believe in the 1850s that bondage needed to be eradicated. Get rid of slavery. That's what they're saying. White Southerners feared that holding back the expansion of slavery would consign the institution of slavery to certain deaths. See, so the Southern people were like, no, man, if you get rid of my slaves, man, my whole empire is going to crash because I need them for the cotton picking and all that stuff. So they were like, no, we don't want that. Over the course of the decade, that's 10 years, the two sides became increasingly polarized. It's like, are you a mask wearer? No, I'm not a mask wearer. Are you into the V? No, I don't want to have any injections into me. It's becoming the same thing. Do you see that? That they are creating a civil war, you guys, right now with all of their edicts and mandates. That's what they're doing right now. They're trying to get us against our neighbors. Just everybody, just get away from me. I'm for this. I'm for that. I'm against this. I'm against that. I'm against the administration. I'm for the administration. They're doing a civil war in our heads right now. Can you see this? It's the same. It's the same right here. So over the course of the decade, it took 10 years, The two sides became increasingly polarized, meaning you're against me, I'm against you, we're opposite. You're wearing a mask, that means you're a sheeple. You're not wearing a mask, that means you're you're not following the instructions. And politicians less able to contain the dispute through compromise. You know how they're saying, okay, everybody, you got to have a sign in front of your store to wear a mask. And then there's some stores that are like, nah, we don't even do that. When Abraham Lincoln, the candidate of the explicitly anti-slavery Republican Party, won the 1860 presidential election, 7 southern states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, carried out their threat and seceded. Okay, we're out of here now. Bye, see you later. You're not our president. That's what they said. Organizing as the Confederate States of America. This is really good, interesting stuff right here. Britannica Encyclopedia or something. In the early morning hours of my birthday, April 12th, but a century ahead, 1861, rebels opened fire on Fort Sumter. Sumter, yeah. At the entrance to the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I went to Fort Jackson, my AIT. Curiously, this first encounter of what would be the bloodiest war in the history of the United States claimed no victims. Huh? How could it be the bloodiest war in history and it claimed no victims? Oh, I don't know. After a 34-hour bombardment, Major Robert Anderson surrendered his command of about 85 soldiers to some 5,500 besieging Confederate troops under P.G.T. Beauregard. Within weeks, 4 more southern states, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina, left the Union to join the Confederacy. So the Union is where they were first, and then the Confederacy people, I'm interpreting to mean that they didn't want the slavery, but let's see what's happening. With war upon the land, President Lincoln called for 75,000 militiamen to serve for 3 months. Wow. He proclaimed a naval blockade of the Confederate States. Gulp. Although he insisted that they did not legally constitute a sovereign country, but were instead states in rebellion, he also directed the Secretary of the Treasury, to advance $2 million to assist in the raising of troops, and he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. Whoa, yikes. You know, the habeas corpus is the one that says, give me the body, take him out of jail or whatever. Apparently he suspended it so that you couldn't do that. Wow. First along the East Coast and ultimately throughout the country. Do you see how they do this in little sections, you guys? You know how with this Union or United Nations, they're doing stuff in China. They're doing stuff in, what's it called? The land from down under. Can't think of what it's called right now. Australia. They're doing stuff in New Zealand. They're doing stuff in France and in Italy. And if you go on, what's it called? Telegram, you can see all those protests. In Brazil, they're doing all these different things all over because they're doing like the UN, trying to get all together and get everybody together. This is something like this. We got to look at this. So the Confederate government had previously authorized a call for 100,000 soldiers for at least 6 months service, and this figure was soon increased to 400,000. Wow, look at these guys. That's a Union Army volunteer. A volunteer. How many people are volunteering for getting this thing, experimental jab? How many people are volunteering for that? You know that it's still 2027, that they're having clinical trials only under emergency use, and it's not even, what's the word? It's authorized only under emergency use, but it's not approved. Why would monkey kidney cells and aborted fetuses and adjuvants like, I don't know, lye, sodium hydroxide, how would those things be good for our body? And graphene, graphite, pencil lead like stuff? Is that a vitamin? No, it's not. Why are you guys taking that stuff? I'm just saying. It's crazy. Don't be a zombie. Wake up. At first glance, it seemed that the 23 states that remained in the Union after secession, after those other ones moved out, were more than a match for the 11 southern states. Approximately 21 million people lived in the North, compared with some 9 million in the South, of whom about 4 million were slaves. In addition, the North was the site of more than 100,000 manufacturing plants against 18,000 south of the Potomac River. Potomac, that sounds like an Indian name. And more, you know, like American Indian. Is that what they call it? Native American. And more than 70% of the railroads were in the Union. So they had all the manufacturing plants over in the North, and the railroads were in the Union. So the North is apparently the Confederate Army, and the Union is the Southern. Furthermore, the Federals had at their command a 30-to-1 superiority in arms production to a 2-to-1 edge in available manpower, and a great preponderance of commercial and financial resources. The Union also had a functioning government and a small but efficient regular army and navy. So the Confederate is federal, right? Yeah. And the Union was the South, because everybody at once was a union, but then those 11 states seceded out to be federal. Oh, Confederate. Oh, that's why in Washington, D.C., they have a big statue of Albert Pike, who's the one that wrote Morals and Dogma. And that's where they got all the Freemasonic stuff and all that. I'm just saying, because of that federal, okay, it's different. Confederate states. Here's the map right here. That lets you know. Indian Territory, unorganized. Federal territory, organized. So you see over here on the left side where it says federal territory organized, loyal free states. And then you got the yellow is the loyal slave states right in the middle. And then the joined union, 1863, is the red. And they're not showing the green, but those Texas, that's part of something. I think that's part of the federal, but they're not showing it on this little thing right here. See, they're not showing you the graph. The Confederate States of America consisted of 11 states, 7 original members, and 4 states that seceded after the fall of Fort Sumter. 4 border states held slaves but remained in the Union. West Virginia became the 24th loyal U.S. state in 1863. So the Confederacy was not predestined to defeat, however. The Southern armies had the advantage of fighting on interior lines, like these are interior lines in here, before 1860. Moreover, the long Confederate coastline, so this must be the federal, this is the long Confederate coastline, all here, whoa, of 3,500 miles seemed to defy blockade, and the Confederate President, Jefferson Davis, hoped to receive decisive foreign aid and intervention. Confederate soldiers were fighting to achieve a separate and independent country based on what they call Southern institutions, the chief of which was the institution of slavery. What? Let's read this again. Confederate soldiers, this is the federal. Confederate soldiers were fighting to achieve a separate and independent country based on what they called Southern institutions, the chief of which was the institution of slavery. That's the Confederate federal government wants slavery that they call Southern institutions. Oh, institutions. What other kind of institutions? Marriage in this institution. What about mental institutions? What about the other mental institutions called universities? Those are mental institutions. They deal with your mental, the government, mental, hospitals. Those are institutions. Interesting. So the chief of which was the institution of slavery. Oh, yeah. You do feel like a slave when you're in the institution. I mean, the university, which is a mental institution, because I was there. The university. We just tell you, let's see your ID. Pick up your report. You're my teacher. Yeah, but I need to see your ID. Why? Don't you remember who I am? Come on, you only have 50 students here. You don't remember seeing me? And you want me to show you my ID to pick up my test? That's crazy, man. It's kind of weird. But so the Southern cause was not a lost one. Indeed, other countries, most notably the United States itself, in the American Revolution against Britain, had won independence against equally heavy odds. You know, that American Revolution against Britain, they didn't want the king to be taxing them. So they did that, throwing the tea over the bay. The high commands, command problems plagued both sides. Of the two rival commanders-in-chief, most people in 1861 thought Davis to be abler than Lincoln. Davis was a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, a hero of the Mexican-American War, a capable Secretary of War under President Franklin Pierce, and a U.S. representative and senator from Mississippi. Lincoln, who had served in the Illinois state legislature and as an undistinguishable, hang on, can't talk right now. What is this here? Lincoln, who had served in the Illinois state legislature and an undistinguished one-term member of the U.S. House of Representatives, could boast of only a brief period of military service in the Black Hawk War, in which he saw no action. Hey, look at, he's got a nice haircut. And you know what? He looks all right. I mean, he looks better than, yeah, that's an interesting looking beard. As president, CFO and commander-in-chief of the Confederate forces, Davis revealed many fine qualities, including dignity, firmness, determination, and honesty, but he was flawed by his excessive pride, hypersensitivity to criticism, poor political skills, and tendency to micromanage. What are you doing over there? Let me see them. He engaged in extended petty quarrels with generals and cabinet members. He also suffered from ill health throughout the conflict. Davis's effectiveness was further hampered by a political system that limited him to a single 6-year term, thereby making him a lame duck immediately upon his election. And that frowned on organized political parties, which Southerners accused of having been at least partly responsible for the coming of the Civil War. Oh. The lack of political parties meant that Davis could command no loyalty from a broad group of people, such as governors or political appointees, when he came under heavy criticism. Oh, that's Jefferson Davis. Let me see. Oh, okay. Gosh, I thought that was Lincoln. That's Jefferson Davis. Whoa. He looks a lot like Lincoln. What if that would be a weird conspiracy? If Jefferson Davis was Lincoln, that would be weird. Like he just changed his whole image by growing his hair out and putting a top hat and growing out his beard, because he sure looks a lot like, I'm just saying. Wow. You know, these white guys, they all look the same. I'm just saying. To a large extent, by his own preference, Davis was his own Secretary of War, although 5 different men served in that post during the lifetime of the Confederacy. Davis himself also filled the position of General-in-Chief of the Confederate armies until he named Robert E. Lee to that position on February 6, 1865. I was born in 1965. So this is 100 years before I was born, when the Confederacy was near collapse. Interesting. In naval affairs, an area about which he knew little, the Confederate president seldom intervened directly, allowing the competent Secretary of the Navy, Stephen Mallory, to handle the Southern naval buildup and operations on the war. Although his position was onerous and quite likely could not have been filled as well by any other Southern political leader, most of them having come to prominence in a period of growing disinclination to compromise, Davis's overall performance in office left something to be desired. Oh, you know how people are always picking on the different CEOs that we've had, Clinton and then Obama and then Trump. Did I skip anybody? No. And then now the one Biden, and everybody's got to criticize how they are. This is kind of the same thing that they did here. Interesting. Discover more about Copperhead opposition to Abraham Lincoln during the U.S. presidential election, of 1864. Like, see that picture right there? Right there? That's Lincoln. But he's got a full beard. But gosh, that other guy, he kind of looked a lot like that picture. I'm just saying, that's weird. This kind of looks funny. This is a painting, obviously. These guys have got short arms. Look at that. Looks weird. So it's not a picture. It's a painting. And they totally look all weird and stubby. I got to call this person back. To the astonishment of many, Lincoln grew in stature with time and experience. And that's not talking about how tall he was. And by 1864, he had become consummate politician and war director. Lincoln matured into a remarkably effective president because of his great intelligence, communication skills, humility, sense of purpose, sense of humor, fundamentally moderate nature, and ability to remain focused on the big picture. But he had much to learn at first, especially in strategic and tactical matters and in his choices of army commanders, with an ineffective first Secretary of War. Ineffective? Who was that? Simon Cameron, Lincoln unhesitatingly insinuated himself directly into the planning of military movements. Edwin M. Stanton, a well-known lawyer, that's an emolument, appointed to the secretaryship on January 20. Look at these good old boys all hanging together in the bar, because that's a British accreditation registry right there, was equally untutored in military affairs, but he was fully as active a participant as his superior. Winfield Scott was the federal general-in-chief when Lincoln took office. The 75-year-old Scott, a hero of the War of 1812, so they say, and the Mexican-American War, was a magnificent and distinguished soldier whose mind was still keen, but he was physically incapacitated and had to be retired from service on November 1st, 1861. Who else do we know is mentally incapacitated that needs to retire? But Scott was replaced by young George B. McClellan, who was an excellent organizer. Oh, you organize so well. McClellan, however, lacked tenacity. Oh, he didn't keep going back, huh? Persistently overestimated, the Confederate strength and therefore stalled his attacks. Like playing jump rope. And was openly disdainful of the president. Because he wanted McClellan to focus his attentions on the Army of the Potomac, Lincoln relieved McClellan as general-in-chief on March 11th, 1862. Henry W. Halleck, who proved to be a strong administrator, but did little in the way of strategic planning. So this does have a lot to do with capacity. Do these people have the capacity to do their jobs? Succeeded McClellan on July 11th and held the position until he was replaced by Ulysses S. Grant on March 9th, 1864. Halleck then became chief of staff under Grant in a long-needed streamlining of the federal high command. Did you hear that? A long-needed. We need somebody. Grant served it efficaciously. He did well as general-in-chief throughout the remainder of the war. So you could keep reading this. I just went on Britannica, but I just wanted to say that it's kind of interesting to read about the past, and you can kind of see how, it's the same types of things. We got these images of these pictures here of these men. They're just taking a picture, they're human, just like the puppets that we have now. They're beasts, just like the puppets that we have now. But don't you think it's interesting? I do. I'm a human, I'm a living woman, just like you are a living individual. And I like to do fun things like paint pictures, sew every once in a while. Okay, I haven't sewed in a while, and I have a sewing machine back here. I like to do fun things. I like to do the hair. Sometimes I put makeup on, sometimes I don't. I like to drive a car. Okay, no, I like to travel in my car. But I actually have to go because I'm going to have to get a car because I don't have one now that I had a car accident and my car just crunched up like an accordion. But I wanted to bring this up because I did see on a couple of the videos that I have some really good comments, and you guys, we need as much help from everyone. If you have a great comment or you can teach somebody something, please go ahead, put your platform in there so we can follow you, so that we can learn more, okay? Because we need as much help as we can get. I gotta go look into getting a car, so I'll have to end this.